So today, I believe I'm going to do a double feature. So this is going to be 2 videos in one, sort of. Actually, what we're going to do visually is have just some gameplay on, and I'm going to talk about 2 different things. So the video will be segmented with timestamps. Okay, so the first video is about the Cyber Athletics League and the Online Gaming League. Advice to the Esports League gamers. How the 100-0 KDR was achieved and why it is no longer legitimately plausible. Lately, it seems more and more people who enjoy gaming may be feeling very off about the direction of modern games. And I felt maybe people were ready for the demystification of how the 100-0 KDR was achieved without any unfairness or tampering. In the vast majority of modern online games, this is going to be impossible, but likely not for the reasons you'd think. So I'm going to outline a few key points and the other stuff that I feel is important, but it could also be a bit subjective, and also will be included changes in how the games work differently so that it's now impossible in modern games. So I'm going to explain how it changed and all that stuff. So the first thing you need to pay attention to is the score reset. If you have an hour without a score reset, is this reasonable or generous? Even 30 minutes is still within range of a skilled player on an average or above average day. But we don't really see this anymore in games, and it's not entirely due to the added objectives or hero class-based elements to first-person shooter games. There are more obvious factors that largely have gone unexamined due to changes that occurred right around the time gaming was becoming more mainstream. And a lot of gamers from CAL and OGL eras, some of them hopped aboard with excuses not too dissimilar as those continuing today, and some probably went to other genres and games like I did for a while, or even put gaming as just an occasional thing. And what I'm trying to say is that this is a bit of a renewed version of a very old and probably very forgotten argument. Explaining things for context, I know you want this demystified, so let me give a rundown on how it would work. Perhaps you'll notice the differences before I point them out. So you want 100 KDR in a game. First, you need to like the game, like a lot. Enough to probably play it approaching too much territory. Or you play it for over a year and learn all the ins and outs to get good. It's important you are having fun, otherwise, it's my opinion people should consider why they aren't playing something that is fun for them. That aside, it's not exactly about time put in or exactly about recoil memorization, but if you want that 100-0, you really need to know the game extremely well. I don't know if it's the back of your hand or you have to dream about it, but you need to be knowledgeable and dedicated to honing your skills and strats in any situation that you'll be facing. Okay, so the first checkbox is play a game that you enjoy. Okay, aka having fun. The second checkbox is know that game. The third would be something like know yourself, know your team, know your opponent. Although it could be something like be aware. It's one thing to know about a game and being good. It's another thing to be able to predict your teammates' performance. There are layers to this, and there are layers of knowing your opponent. To be clear, I'm not talking about knowing them IRL or screen sniping. I mean more in that you've either played against them firsthand or watched recent gameplay of them somehow. As I said, layers. You can know them, although they'd likely be on your team or a well-known rival team if that was the case. I'm trying to outline things that are essential to the 100-0 strategy. Even for a beginner, I'd I'd hope should be able to understand that this isn't magic, but it does take more than effort, and typically is not luck-based. So for number 4, let's build off the awareness we already have even further to looking at the score. It is most common for many gamers to target the scoreboard for a variety of reasons. I'm not going to talk about all of them, just one. The reason you have to watch all the scores and not just your own while going for the 100-0 KDR, you want to avoid scaring the server or spooking the server into running away and causing a reset. Yes, that actually was a real thing. Typically, you had to turn auto balance to the minimal settings, like you had options. The minimal settings that were available at the time. Basically, when auto balance was introduced a long time ago, it was more optional and it had adjustments that could be made. It didn't really need an AI or a matchmaker or ranking system, or it didn't require anything like that. It didn't require anything more than a proper server to set it up. Basically, a pub server should be arranged to avoid what was called team stacking, which a lot of people would already know is when the bases are loaded on one side. And without getting fully technical about setting up old servers, since this is about achieving a legendary KDR, I would simply describe it like this for the already experienced gamer. If it's 5v5 or whatever, for 2 high-performing players on one team, there should be 2 also around the same skill and score on the other team. As long as both teams have 2 high-performing players each, meaning that there are 4 players in the server trying for 100-0, and one of them will make it, while the other 3 are likely providing a challenge while they work their way up to achieving it for themselves. I'm telling you how to do this with 3 or 4, technically all 5, however many even teams, since this is a pub theory. I'm letting you know the inside of how it used to go down, so you understand there wasn't any trickery involved for people to voluntarily participate in doing stuff like this. But I have to stress the score, you have to watch that, because if you are having a crazy burst of skill one day, and you could actually scare off the other 6 players, 5, 4, 10, 6. The other 6 players in the server, or worse, if you only had 2 pro players, one on each team, it's actually harder to keep people from leaving the server because listen, if one person is destroying the entire opposing team every round, eventually a lot of people get discouraged and they quit. Remember, this is a pub, this isn't a scrimmage, it's not tryouts, it's not practice, it's not a league match. If you want 100-0 outside of pubs, as I'm describing, it can happen, but I believe most FPS vets will agree with the majority of this message, aside from my opinions, and who knows, I'd be interested to hear it. Okay, so for the score, it is key that the team is as close to balance as practically possible and reasonable, for the exception that you're obviously going for 100 kills before someone catches you messing up, because that's what happens. It's better when people aren't coming and going, but that isn't always a deal breaker, for the server. But the teams need to stay balanced enough to not reset. So I guess if you're getting kills too fast, you need to change to a different tactic. Typically, you won't get to 100-0 by being predictable, so let's make that number 5. So checkbox number 5, have a diverse kit of strategies and tactics. Be better at them than your opponent, and avoid being stale and overly repetitious. I think, for me, I just kept this in the 5th box, but perhaps it deserves a bit more detail. Well, I do know, I do not believe you have to be as chaotic of a gamer as I am to reach 100-0. You should understand that some of the best players learn from knowing that you can practice a few different strategies and mix them when it suits your mood, and a lot of high-level gamers already do this. Perhaps you already do it in some manner. And I'm intentionally avoiding mentioning metas, since they are a whole other topic, and my TLDR. My TLDR is, I find they're often misunderstood or misinterpreted and became something that wasn't always the way that it is now. But a psychological metagame is number 5. Not just playing your strats by emotion, but sometimes mixing it up, or being overly stale for an extra round every 49th or 50th kill, something like that, you know. Don't just keep doing the same strategy, like mix things up. Don't be stale, people, figure it out. Sometimes people watch and wait their turn to challenge. Sometimes if you create a deliberate pattern, you can test people to see if they've been watching your patterns. I'm trying to talk fast, but think about it. And then psych those people out. And those were the days when people pre-fired into an entryway expecting a head to be in a precise place at a precise moment. And then, you know, the feeling when you're in spawn laughing about it. Because, you know, somebody just... Anyway. So, number something, strategies and tactics that refine your skills and muscle memory. If you want a badge of honor that says you can run circles around people, then you basically do need to be able to do that. At least in a performance level type of approach. It takes practice, lots of repetition, and fixing your own mistakes. So, these are a lot of the secrets of getting good at games, but also for the element of display, a different form of team versus team random player competition. As I said, this was a thing people tried to do, and plenty of people did it. I've managed to do it a few times, in Scout's Knives, for example, and some of the older versions of Counter-Strike, during the eras I described, before CSGO and the inability to drastic limitations for non-Steam hosted servers. You know, private, decentralized, before it was centralized. Anyway, see, back in the days that popularized and made gaming go mainstream, the early 2000s, you didn't have the company server running the game like almost everything is today in 2024. You know, the games as a service. You can't have cheaters in the server. You can't have imposed matchmaker or auto team or auto balance. That's not set up correctly. You know, today's games typically don't let you host a server, so you can't moderate it yourself. I don't want to lose anybody with saying words a little bit like with the comma wrong or something. But yeah, you know, you used to be able to host a server or rent it from our server hosting place for your team, and you get a forum, you know, a little website. That way people could sign up or challenge your team or offer to do scrimmages, practices, those type of opportunities. Back then it wasn't difficult, just following a few links, hyperlinks usually, using a server much the same way a client connects to them today, except it wasn't centralized, you know, like I just said. Okay, so moderation was pretty key. As I mentioned, you need a reputable server, a server that handles cheating cases well enough that it has a reputation that attracts high-performing players. I suppose servers and what you wanted to do with them was really entirely up to the one hosting it. Seriously, that was largely the point. Back when you had Half-Life mods and all those awesome things. 24/7 Dust 2 is not uncommon, but a lot of maps had a lot of love, where they were either highly used in the map rotations or map voting, or even had basically an hour, maybe 24 hours, but that's another topic. Letting people in the server decide the next map or not. Again, you could set the game up with league rules or low gravity and RPG mods. Regardless, it was important that people enjoyed the server. Otherwise, there were typically dozens or maybe hundreds more to pick from, largely depending on what you wanted to do. And if you had your own server, you could load up maps, mods, whatever you want. Use admin control, turn stuff on/off. This concept might be alien to a lot of people, but it's kind of like having a GM from an MMORPG, someone with the level of control over the game that the average player doesn't, such as the ability to kick or ban. Would that just worked in as a form of a list, a kick list and a ban list? Where's my place? Oh yeah, okay. But good admins and moderators often kept a more accessible list outside the server, so they can make note of certain people who could pretty much never be unbanned, or for whatever reason were prone to accidental ban, perhaps due to their temperament, or being in front of the team, or server regular, or that sometimes pissed off a new moderator. I might as well share the tip. And for a good moderator, me and a few friends were admins and put money into server hosting and the forum, etc. Sometimes you need people to moderate when nobody else can do it, when no one's around. Typically, someone would pay you to moderate on your server under the terms provided to them by the owner, meaning if the server owner does not find the moderator to be doing a job that is compatible for the server, the moderator or baby admin privileges could be revoked, and within reason are not expecting to get a refund or something, because it's not a purchase. They are buying moderator or moderation. They're helping to contribute to the server, and that does not prevent admin abuse, but it is one of the strategies I had personally found was reasonable and helped do its part. You have less people asking to do it if they have to pay for it, and you let them know that it's not something you're paying for. You're donating to the server, and as server admin, I would dedicate one day every month or a few months to display the top of the line cheats or hacks on my server. Not me myself demonstrating the hacks, but back then I would invite some of them to test their development in my server. Moderators and players in my server had the opportunity to spectate and watch the hard-to-detect hacks that the esports pro players didn't get caught using for almost a decade. So, pro players got to learn how to identify hacks, how to tell for sure if it was a hack, and the hack devs got to further refine their products to make them less detectable to most humans. The way my server kept cheaters out is by allowing them in. Not only were there demonstrations of the hacks, sometimes a portion of the specific days would open the server up to the rules of allowing certain types of cheating for limited windows of time periods. It was very important for me as an admin trying to enjoy playing the game and not having to play admin 24/7. The players who frequented my server knew for 100% certain what a cheater looks like and what a non-cheating pro player looks like, because I absolutely could not stand baseless accusations of people being new, of or from people being new to the server and calling someone a cheater. That meant I had to stop what I was doing and go on the server myself and watch and inspect for myself, investigate. If it turned out I just spectated for 10 minutes because someone was being a scrub, that person gets kicked for a day or two. They can come back, but they'll get kicked again if they do it again. If they do the same thing again. And usually, people stop. Unless it was a cheater, most people learn the difference pretty quick. They didn't have much reason to know if they frequented the server a ton. I mean, they didn't have much reason not to know if they frequented the server a ton. That's what I mean about leave the words. Not was there. Anyways. Figured I'd throw in those tips I mentioned at the start, as it did all help in my opinion, although you certainly didn't have to host your own server or set every single thing up in the way I ran things. So we returned back to the score and the timer, which really about auto balance, which in modern gaming lingo, auto balance got rebranded as matchmaker, which is arguably a bit different. but sometimes, and I would argue it is definitely not a replacement of how FPF matches work during CAL and OGL. Modern heavy reliance on matchmaker has left a lot of games abandoned because games can't even start with bots. Can't even get one game up and going. And it's sad. It's not. I'm not laughing that it's a good thing. It's a little chilly, and I'm trying to do this. And sure, maybe game design isn't focused on once a modern game dies. It's really hard to keep it from going completely dead and unplayable. From going completely dead and unplayable. But if you really want 100-0, you need matchmaker or the balance to be good enough to prevent people from leaving before you reach 100-0. Okay, that's the takeaway from it. That's really all you gotta do. All these steps are essentially this. You can't entirely blame it on the matchmaker, as I mentioned, some of the more optimal conditions and why they're optimal, but you just don't have match setups this way anymore. You don't have access to hop between several servers and get a feel for what they're about, and to choose when you want to shoot at fish in a barrel versus practicing with other high-performing tryhards. But yet, almost contradictory, it is entirely the modern matchmaker's fault, because they're increasingly algorithmic and designed to torment you. You can look it up, there's patents. I wish that was hyperbolic, but I mean that very seriously, actually. A game with matchmaker for me, the algorithmic one, if it's really a bad game, really a bad game, the matchmaker, I mean, not the rest of the game, that could be compelling up until the point that I can't take the matchmaker anymore. A really bad game for me is a base loaded with people who want to quit before the round has even begun. I came from an era of gaming where if you want to be a tryhard, then you never quit for a reason that isn't in real life. You know, if in real life comes up, sure, man, it's just a game, don't worry about it. Otherwise, what are you doing, man? Like, you're in a freaking game, play. Anyway, if you're losing, stop losing, get better, take note of every single thing you're doing wrong while you're making the mistake, or you could take time after the match. It's not a speed run. Even StarCraft had more than Zergling Rush. FPS is not StarCraft or Command & Conquer. All you want is 100 virtual bodies before the people who all consented to be a part of this decide that's not fun for them. It is difficult, but yet it's really not. If you consider yourself at the top of your FPS game, you should be able to replicate this if you somehow get these conditions, or similar enough conditions. Well, I could go on for a while giving pro level tips and lesser known or forgotten secrets. I think that's the bulk of what I had for you about this. You could still catch the 100-0 in certain games today, but it's a lot more rare, and I think some people started to wonder where it actually went and how feasible to pull something like this off. Maybe you could look back at some of the footage you saw here, or something that you've done yourself before. Maybe you can see some of this in some of the things that we played. What do you think, though? Do you think 100-0 is a thing forever out of reach for even the pro level players of the past? Is it a good thing? Do you think it's better or worse? Do you like matchmaker? What do you think about auto balance? Is that something you missed out on and wished it was still more prevalent, or maybe played Quake or Counter-Strike back in the late 90s or in early 2000s? 90s. To conclude with the plugs, the channel's not monetized, and you can subscribe or like if you want to help with discovery and or showing your support. But anyways, that's what I have for you this time with this section. I might do another upload soon about gaming too, actually. But otherwise, try to keep this channel's content available if you get the meaning. And I don't want to upload without some inspiration or reason to do so. I value your time, same with my own. So thank you for that. And the second thing that I wanted to talk about, I thought this was going to be about half, like a lot quicker, but anyway. it's important to me, and I it's okay if I section it to another part of the video. It's titled Early 2000s Gamer Girls vs 2024, and what the WTF is GAMERGATE3 anyway. It came to my attention that Gamergate and now GAMERGATE2 are these media buzzwords, which seem to me to gloss over or ignore some of the key issues that those calling attention where they do it. I mean, outlets that focus on bizarre narratives rather than the truthful ones. As in, you know, if people wanted to address the rise of online toxicity, particularly in gaming, I find it how uninformed the voices and finger pointing are on the matter, often. I once used to think it was weird. There were some real issues, but the ones a lot of gamers could once agree upon seem to get a little overall focus or mention, let alone trying to actually find well thought out, reasonable resolution. However, I don't personally think that anymore, and I like to tell some details, and this is about real people who don't want to come forward themselves for their own reasons. Okay, so modern gaming, I'm saying the names, but not of any specific people involved, okay? In Overwatch, there was, there was an entire system of players, Overwatch 1, okay? It was an entire thing of players, who pay to be carried into higher ranks. People are like, what? What? People do that? Anyway, but what this also means is there are players who intentionally lose, sometimes to help a specific person on the other team to win. Other times it's to lower the score of an account, Smurf, that they use to do this on. And I'm not anti-Smurf, I'm just letting you know that some people are doing this, or were doing this. So a ton of people are intentionally losing because they are being paid to lose in some fashion, which is really kind of weird to me, but I also understand what happened for it to get like that. This carrying and intentional throwing that is really only the tip of the iceberg, though. Players in top brackets have, at certain periods in the game's lifespan, they will play on an alt account and intentionally lose or throw while the team of a player who is trying to rise on the higher ranks, to prevent you from getting up there. I have found myself in the heights of many games, although personally in Overwatch I did not love or enjoy the game enough, you can see above, to be dedicated and put up with all the things I didn't like about it. I play games now to have fun. I was once a 365 tryhard and had to land for something in the middle of that, but so by no means do I care about modern gaming rank, quote-unquote rank, feature, or matchmaker. I did a video on that, which is this video, which is above in a different section, titled 100 KDR, but I'm explaining this from different perspectives, so let's go to person one. This first person is someone I've known a while and gamed with a lot sporadically over the years. For a game like CS or Quake, they'd likely be a little bit mediocre, in my opinion, but they know Overwatch very well. They know their characters and perform at a high level for their, the baseline average Overwatch player. They're well enough above average. Anyway, that game has had a lot of occurrences that makes solo carrying a thing of mint. But this first person, they stuck with the game for a very long time. It was important to them, and no matter how the awful changes, they stayed and kept trying for the tip top. It's important, maybe I say, that I've heard a lot of these same or similar types of things from quite a number of people, and is why I'm surprised that I don't hear more people who have the soapbox presenting this type of information. Like, me, clumsy me, I'm the one who's trying to do it. Okay, So this first person, they rise through the ranks, sometimes legitimately, and also sometimes try to buy their way in. Okay? I mean, hey, like I said, they really care. They really want to be in the game, and I get it. They're good. If you gotta pay someone to be on your team, that really sucks that the game is made that way. But anyway, but the trend seems to be this. Once a person has invested enough money in, or somehow gotten the other gatekeepers in their party, they're often offered a choice. Provide nude pictures, video, stuff of that nature. Okay, that's what this, not the whole section, but this part of the section is about, okay? And while I personally heard more accounts from this occurring to female gamers, there are also males who gave their own accounts of the same thing happening to them, okay? I don't want to spend too long speculating, as I mentioned before. I've seen some similar oddness in other games. At the tippy top of usually pay-to-win mobile games. Okay? But I have seen top 1,000 or whatever players have private servers for congratulating the newcomers, as well as inviting them into a sex cult, or something involving nude pictures, which I would politely decline, as again, I don't entirely understand what that's all about, and I don't claim to. However, in Overwatch, it doesn't seem to be optional, or post-celebration. It seems to be used as an extortion tactic to enforce actual gatekeeping by putting in the effort of rigging the game. Big streamers are less likely to know about this sort of thing if they themselves aren't involved in carrying people for money and throwing matches, as I previously described. I don't know the exact number. I prefer not to make pointless, baseless speculation on something like that. I can only tell you that it somehow is large enough number to successfully rig a game hosted on Blizzard's own servers, while also being secret enough to not get called out by someone else at the top with the viewers. In recent years, events came to public light about this in other industry companies, and I feel that even if through my clumsy words, these stories should be told. Like, what the heck is Gamergate if people aren't talking about the actual stuff that happens to gamers that's, making it's torture. People are paying money to be tortured. People need to look into it. It needs to be looked into anyway. So for a moment, I'd like to talk about a different person, different game, different gaming era, early 2000s. This person ran their own predominantly female-only Counter-Strike server in the early 2000s. In the early 2000s, I learned that it was not uncommon that some female gamers decided to self-host their own servers and choose to exclude disruptive male players. In order for me to know from my POV about it, I was technically allowed in the server because I was friends and neighbors with a server owner who operated a server like this. Although there were times I got booted just for using my mic by a brand new mod or admin that didn't know who I was, which just meant I'd have to wait to talk to the owner in real life, usually to get unbanned, unless a regular was on, so it happened, my ID showed up on the ban list. But anyway, yeah, I got to see some other stupid things, not just in their server. My server also had its share of the same policies. For my POV, ladies, I think I could be wrong, but maybe males get this feeling of happiness when they know a female is around. Not all, but younger or more immature males. It can be pretty intense, and they end up acting foolish and stupid, trying to put it kindly, because it's not always intentionally malicious to come across from the male's POV as harassment, but their brain missed the fact that their ass is supposed to be playing a hardcore game at that moment, not daydreaming about a girl. Okay, so seriously, competitive gamer girl do not appreciate disrupting the game and giving them easy kills. It kills the flow of the game. That's for the guys who didn't realize that yet, maybe. But, I mean, who doesn't know that? But yeah, anyway, setting boundaries in online spaces and in gaming was never originally something bad or taboo. It really made things a lot more conducive for gameplay and the enjoyment of everyone around. Everyone involved. If games were more decentralized with their hosting and operation of online play, there was a lot less room for toxicity, which was a route of being able to play with other gamers you wanted to play with. And you didn't have to block or ban hardly anybody back then. Only the server admin typically needed to worry about these type of things. Not that individual players shouldn't have the option, I suppose. But people used to be encouraged to talk things out. If someone wanted in your server badly enough, they would calm down and not make the server owner upset. And I almost forgot that servers are commonly held locks for entry, most commonly for league matches or scrimmages, to prevent anyone else from joining by mistake, but really for a number of reasons potentially. Maybe the owner wants to test something. Maybe the server got raided by a group you didn't want to have access, and you're changing the password again. Before the ending, I just felt like mentioning my friend from long ago showed me a lot of things, and I'm sorry, but I can't put all that here. I learned a bit why some females stay off the microphone or avoid the topic of their IRL gender, and what little it's worth, my friend had me curious enough to a trend I was already beginning back then, to keep to a trend I was already beginning back then. While to me, I give away plenty of indications here and there, it doesn't bother me to largely remain gender ambiguous online or in gaming. It is gaming, not speed dating. If someone is mistaken online, I may correct, but usually there isn't a point, from my perspective. In games like Overwatch, I'd rather let a player who cares about the game do the shot calling. I've done it in games for decades, and I prefer to let whoever can for them to do it. But for sure, I'll use comms and steer if nobody else will, and if it was needed. Really, in older FPS games, you weren't using comms for the same stuff people use it for today. You'd want them to be clean, you'd want people to shut up so you could hear, but you'd also want important information, and sometimes people are just able to talk in game without much performance loss. In a Counter-Strike pump, people might talk or trash talk, depending on the server. There were hundreds to choose from, and the options to spin one up yourself. Set the server rules yourself. But unfortunately, modern games with centralized control, AI moderation instead of real humans that people could get to know, games have become less hospitable, in my opinion, towards females, women, and girls, and in general have become more toxic in their own gaming communities themselves. But it's not entirely gamers in some blanket statement, and it's not certainly gamer culture, as I used to be a part of real gamer culture that took actions to mitigate the harassment and reduce the number of people ruining the game for people who were just there to play the game. Regardless if there are 200 servers or 2,000 servers available, if private servers were still commonplace, things like toxicity and harassment, abuse, outrageously over-rampant cheating, as unsolvable issues, they would have little room or opportunity to continue, let alone to thrive. Some people might go through the list, getting kicked or banned from 200 or 2,000 servers, but eventually realize their server their server list down to 16 and maybe start feeling a bit differently about their choices they've made up to that point, or maybe going forward. Sometimes you just see that once in a while. Sometimes you just see that type once in a while when their kick date is up. Sometimes they're calm. Sometimes you just re-add them to the kick list for 3 months or something. You can't and shouldn't want to police other servers, let alone all of them. Let the server admins run their shit how they want. Talk to them, or don't use that server. It was real simple. You didn't have to play with Yahtzees if that was something you were afraid of for some reason. In gaming, sometimes people swear and exclaim words that others may find offensive. Thus, a lot of servers have their own range of acceptable or prohibited speech. For example, racism. Certain things that will warrant different sentencing. In the majority of servers I would frequent, run, co-run, or affiliate with other servers, we often had a lot of the same or similar rules. Play the game, no cheating, no racist BS or trolling. With map schedule, team link, and a second rule screen, because sometimes it's good to have more specific rules for the community to all agree upon. So because it was the early 2000s and immature people shout explicit things in frustration, I'll say that my policy was a one-time stern prompt warning for indirect racism, meaning whatever was said was not directed at the opponent or team players. It was immaturity and ignorance, and the person would be warned to stop or be ejected from the server. And yeah, sometimes people would come in shouting some crazy racist mumbo-jumbo, and they just get ejected immediately. It doesn't matter the context. If the content is objectively, obscenely, and overtly racist. But music also arguably was tamer back then. So these days, might want to add includes lyrics and then no racist BS, page 2, so you can't kick without sending a warning. I'm gonna have to listen to this whole fucking thing. It's fine. A few times, dude. Not that this clip will be in it. Immature people shout explicit things. Immature people shout explicit things. No, just kidding. So because it was the early 2000s, and immature people shout... Oh wait, I just read that. Oh, I meant to say you can kick without sending a warning. I don't know why I put a T there. I said you have an addendum to no racist BS on page 2. That way, when they do some crazy stuff that you're just like, no man, I'm not even gonna argue with you. You just boop, and then, hey man, what the heck? Say page 2. Anyway, league matches were really the only big iffy situations, as Valve had to arrange matchups. So all that could really be done is that you can't use open comms during warm-ups, or what will have temporarily remove the bad actors on the other team until after the pre-game meetings are resolved and the comms are team-only. Anyway, I want to shed light on the issue and talk about how the problem could be reduced, but unfortunately seems to only get worse the longer it's ignored by so-called news or gaming journalism outlets. I think it's dehumanizing for these abusive authority figures to remove our own autonomy and then continually blame us, gaslighting all the way, for the consequences that come from allowing it to keep going on and on. So it's their system, and they're blaming us for doing what they want. Gaming communities can largely self-moderate their own games if given that opportunity again, and do a lot better job making people feel safer while they enjoy themselves for a few moments in their life. The corporations, AI, and government already had a long time to try their things, and it's made things worse for people, the humans, the people. People can do it better is what I'm saying. Be as tolerable or intolerable as you want in your own server and see how it goes for you. Under decentralized conditions, people are prone to learning respect for their peers and their community, and players are also more likely to stop being scrubs. Those were the golden years of competitive FPS, right when it was becoming popular and bringing non-gamers to be interested in gaming. And yes, I know casuals and mobile gamers. I was there. I played those games too. Some of those games too. This is past finished of what I think I'm allowed to say about these subjects. There's 2 videos all at once, sort of, whatever. You're welcome to like and subscribe, for the algorithm support. I considered putting more effort into producing these uploads, and I did a lot of effort in the channel, but the channel isn't monetized or anything. I'm a starving artist, trying to live life over here. Hopefully the message helps some indie gamers or something, and indie developers or gamers or something. Obviously, I don't have trust in these centralized companies who gaslight their players with abusive systems and blame them for being angry and toxic and hostile and arguably torturous environment. Psychological torture, I mean. But, yep, just trying to keep the boat afloat, if you know. Keep the boat afloat, if you know. Have a great one.